I am the mighty Rygel. Undefeated through countless galaxies, I have come seeking challenge. Defeat me, and my planet shall be yours. The most powerful weapon in the universe. Lose, and you and your civilization will be destroyed.
Every time a fighting game comes out that revolutionizes the way fighting games are played, numerous companies try to cash in with their own similar entities. Thus, when a particular fighting game is taking its cues from some other more popular fighting game, you can usually tell. FX Fighter is somewhere between Virtua Fighter and Tekken in terms of gameplay, as it incorporates a little bit of each into it. And to be quite honest, this game almost works. Almost. It's sad too, because the parts that work really work, but the parts that don't really don't. So it's a hit and miss game. You either like it or you hate it. And today we're going to talk about what's to like and what's to hate, so let's roll in the game stats. FX Fighter was developed by Argonaut Games and published by GTE Entertainment in 1995. It's a 1-to-2 player 3D fighting game featuring VGA 320x200 256 color graphics and support for multiple sound cards. Granted, the most advanced setting I could get working in DOSBox was the Sound Blaster Pro support, so you should probably just choose that mode for simplicity's sake. As for its release date, as far as I can tell, it's still commercial, but it's a really easy game to get from places like Amazon and eBay. As long as you don't buy the first copy you see, you should be able to find people who will sell this game for as little as $1 or $2. So the story is pretty lame, but then again, most fighting games have lame stories, so I'm not going to complain. Basically, this guy by the name of Rygel has been going around the universe challenging the most powerful fighters from various planets. If the fighter wins, they'll take command of Rygel's planet, which is actually a devastatingly powerful weapon that can destroy entire planets. Kind of like the Death Star. If they lose, Rygel blows up their entire planet. How tact. Now before I start ragging on this game's flaws, I just want to point out something very positive about this game. Most of the music is awesome. I mean, here, just listen. Actually, all things considered, the presentation of this game is surprisingly good considering it's a cash-in game. Most of the music is great, the sound effects, while underdone, are still pretty good, and the 3D graphics for a 1995 DOS game are fairly decent. The game uses a special engine dubbed Blazing Renderer Technology, also known as B-Render, and it really does render fully shaded and texture-mapped polygons at extreme speeds on relatively underpowered systems. Heck, the minimum system requirements are nothing more than a mere 33 MHz system with a 486 CPU and 4 MB of RAM. And again, all that rendering speed could just be a factor of how few polygons there actually are. Like, I mean, certain arenas like the one on Planet Perez will actually break the frame rate a little because there's far more polygons there than normal. So yeah, the presentation is awesome. Can't say the same for the gameplay, unfortunately. The voice acting is terrible, the controls are stupid, the combo count doesn't work as expected, the 8 fighters you can choose from are not well balanced at all. I mean, even the options screen is an issue, where if you accidentally hit the reset button at the bottom, all options are reset to default, not just the ones for the screen you're on. Actually, let's talk about the default keyboard controls, because I question the sanity of whoever thought these controls were good. The default controls for player 1 are as follows: X to move left, C to move right, A to jump, Z to duck, V to punch, and Q to kick. I dare you to even attempt to do a quarter circle forward plus kick move with that kind of configuration. Well, it's even worse for the second player, whose controls are N to move left, M to move right, L to jump, comma to duck, B to punch, and P to kick. Yeah, these are some of the worst controls I've ever seen in any game. Ever. Well, the only saving grace of this mess is that they really are just defaults, and you can change them to whatever you want, and trust me when I say you want to change them. Immediately. That said, the keyboard controls aren't very responsive, so I actually recommend you play this game with an arcade stick or gamepad instead, which the game does fully support. So as you've seen so far, the gameplay looks pretty typical for a 3D fighting game. 2 characters duking it out, health bars and win counters at the top, round timer in the middle, an overall game timer at the bottom right, and each time you score a combo it shows up below the health bar of the person who made it. Now, one thing that you may or may not have noticed by now is that there's no replays of the finishing blows for each round, something even the original Virtua Fighter had. The other thing that's a bit harder to notice is that the combo counter doesn't count air juggling moves. So if you hit someone who's airborne more than once, it doesn't count as a combo unless you hit them fast enough while they're airborne that it would count as a combo even if they were on the ground. It's kind of stupid that way, but considering this is one of the first 3D fighting games to actually show the combo counter mid-game, I guess it's to be expected that it wouldn't be too accurate. There's a few other issues with the controls too. On any system powerful enough to give you a full frame rate, character selection will go by stupidly fast, meaning you have to be very light with the controls to get the character you want. Moving to the gameplay, the blocking controls are just plain weird. In some games you block by holding back, such as Street Fighter. In some games you block with a special button, such as Virtua Fighter. In some games you block simply by not pushing anything at all, such as in Tekken 2 and onwards. In FX Fighter, you block by pressing back and punch. Yeah, as you might imagine, blocking in this game is a bit of a technical nightmare since in a lot of fighting games, holding back and pressing punch will give you one of your most powerful punching attacks. But here, all you do is block. It's not even that effective because some of the moves are unblockable, yet unlike in Tekken where the unblockable moves take a moment to execute, the unblockable moves here execute pretty much as fast as any other moves. Another issue with the controls is that nothing you press will register until the fight actually starts. This means you can't queue up your moves like in just about every other fighting game in existence. Thus, if you want to be sure to get a move in at the start as fast as possible, make sure you don't push any buttons at all until the word fight clears the screen. It takes some timing, but you can get used to it. Lastly, there's no universal throw move. Every character has different throw moves, which makes learning how to play as each of them just that much harder. So let's give a bit of a rundown of the characters, starting with who I feel is the weakest of them all, Venom from the planet Perez. Venom is kind of like a praying mantis, and he has some interesting moves, but he's a very slow and underpowered character. I think I only ever lost like 2 matches against him once I had the controls figured out. That said, Venom does have some of the best combos that require little effort to execute, but it's just not enough to make this character worth the effort. Next we have Keiko from the planet Lusk. She's a kicking fiend and has a huge number of kick attacks to take advantage of, but she's otherwise not very powerful, and while she is a fast character, her speed's not really going to help you out much. Next is Shiva from the planet Romba, who's actually one of the most balanced characters in the game. Being part human and part feline, she's able to get on all fours and perform some additional moves in that manner. Her speed is a little higher than normal, and she's got some good combos too. Next is Siren from the planet Ursay, who I've actually been playing as for this entire review. Actually, fighting against Siren isn't too bad, and she's a very similar character to Shiva in terms of balancing, and also has one of the easiest and most effective 4-hit combos to perform. She even has 3 throwing moves, which you'd think would be a good thing, except for the fact that her throw range is stupidly short. And many times I'd be as absolutely close to someone as possible, and be unable to throw them, yet they could still throw me. I find Siren has the best combination of overall speed and power without being cheap, and that's why I've been playing as her. Now, if you're noticing a sexist trend here, you're not alone. The 4 weakest characters are either women or in one case an insect. So now let's talk about the other half of the characters, who are far more powerful and unfair. Firstly, let's do Jake from the planet Central. He's not a very fast character, but he has a ton of moves, meaning button mashers will love this guy since it's so easy to just make stuff happen with him. But again, he's not very fast, so button mashing against him with the AI will likely get you killed. I found the best way to defeat him is with jumping attacks, since the AI in this game seems to have a blind spot in dealing with jump attacks. Though believe it or not, that was a common problem amongst many early fighting games. Next we have Siren 30 from the planet Axone. This robot is slow, has a rather lame array of moves, only a couple throws, but he's dangerously powerful. Fighting as Siren 30 is really hard because of his slowness, but fighting against him is equally hard because the AI perfectly times when to perform his moves against you. If you want to beat Siren 30, jumping moves are again the best way to go. Next is Ashraf from the planet Karlek. For the most part, he's a fairly well-balanced character, with one glaring exception. He has a special move which first pushes his opponent backwards, then immediately knocks the opponent further backwards, and this move has no range limit. He could be on the far left side of the arena, Ashraf could be on the far right, and he can just perform this move and win by an easy ring out. This move makes Ashraf a glaringly unbalanced character. I don't even think he can block this move, but to be honest, I haven't tried, because the best way to beat Ashraf is to stay in close and be aggressive. He only really has one throwing move, and it's not even that great, so staying close is the best strategy. If he gets you near the edge, make sure you jump to his other side as soon as possible so he can't push you out of the ring with a cheap shot. The last of the 8 characters you can play as is Magnon from the planet Inferno. Magnon is unbalanced in such a subtle way that without losing numerous matches against him, you're not even going to realize what's going on. You see, Magnon has very good throw range, multiple throwing moves, recovers from attacks faster than any other character, and also has a few extremely quick and powerful attacks, even though Magnon himself doesn't generally move that fast. Combine all that together, and you end up with a character that's difficult to play as, but the AI can abuse him to such a degree that it's virtually impossible to legitimately win a round against him. I have literally lost matches against Magnon without even getting a split second to fight back. So how do you beat Magnon? You abuse a glitch in the AI, but just watch.
Fight!
Yeah, it's cheap, but guess what? The AI takes advantage of cheap tricks too, so if the AI is going to do stupid things against me, then I have no issues using those same tactics in return, such as hitting an opponent while they're getting back up and they can't block or attack, which is another thing the AI does a lot of. Of course, we still have Rygel of Planet Anarchists to talk about. Rygel, well, he's not impossible, but close. Firstly, he has some stupidly powerful attacks, which is understandable, he's the last boss, but one of the cheapest of them is actually a throw he can perform while you're down. Basically, he picks up your body, spins you for a moment, then tosses you quite literally a distance of about half the arena. Think of it this way, if he performs this move and the middle circle of the arena isn't in the path you're going to be thrown in, you're going out of the ring. Which is kind of funny, because sometimes he'll slam into an invisible wall just beyond the arena boundary. The other thing too is that a number of his moves, including one he loves to perform just to taunt you while you're down, restores his health. Fortunately, unlike other fighting games, you can use as many continues as you have left against Rygel, giving you plenty of chances just to practice beating him. The trick I found while playing as Siren is similar to what I did with Magnon, but has a few extra steps. Firstly, I would back away from Rygel, prompting him to dash towards me. Once within range, I'd give him a rising jump kick, fall behind him, wait for a moment for my character to turn back around and face him, then perform a falling jump kick to knock him down. Hit him once while he's down, back off, repeat. If Rygel knocks you down but he's not close enough to do a spinning throw, he'll sometimes dash towards you and then do his taunting move. If he does this, you can use a spinning get-up kick to knock him over and cancel out some of that health he regains. It takes a ton of practice, but he is beatable. As for the ending, I'm not going to spoil what happens when you beat Rygel, but let's just say he's a jerk. Anyways, that's mostly all I have to say about the game. There's so many things to like about FX Fighter, yet so many things to hate about it too. I don't know. I think it's worth playing at least once if you're a fan of fighting games, but if you're not a fighting game person, then you should probably just avoid this game. As for setting this game up in DOSBox, you may run into a few issues. Firstly, the game runs at a phenomenal frame rate if you set the cycles count to auto or max, but doing so will also result in some extremely odd glitches, and will also destabilize the joystick centering, so I recommend you actually play this game with a very high fixed cycles count. I'm playing with a setting of 100,000, and if your system's powerful enough, it should be able to handle that with no issues. If it can't, then choosing a lower fixed cycles count will simply result in a lower frame rate. Granted, since this is a fighting game, you want the frame rate as high as possible. Also, since the game is 3D, the graphics scalers don't really help the image quality much, so you might as well just leave them off. Now, since this game comes on CD and uses CD audio for the music, I highly recommend creating a QBin image pair of your CD and using DOSBox's image mount command to mount it, instead of mounting your actual CD. Not only will this cut down dramatically on the loading times, but it will also allow the CD audio to play back properly, something that doesn't always work nicely when you directly mount a CD in DOSBox. Though you're gonna find out when you do this that the CD audio in FX Fighter is much louder than the gameplay sound effects, and the music volume slider in-game doesn't really seem to do anything. I recommend you use DOSBox's mixer command to drop the CD audio volume considerably. I find 20 is a good value, but it's ultimately going to depend on how loud you want the music compared to the sound effects. Anyways, that's all for this episode of Ancient DOS Games. Stay tuned for episode 29, where we're going to cover a 3D isometric game featuring keys, monsters, puzzles, and wolf magic. If you know what game it is, then send your guess to adg@pixelships.com and tune in next Saturday as we explore this game's many runes.
Kneel before me!